My name is Clara Ellington, and until that night, I thought I had seen everything life could throw at a woman. I was 72 years old and believed I knew the meaning of worry, but nothing prepared me for the icy terror of that evening. Nana, don't let us go back to the house tonight. My 8-year-old grandson Leo whispered, his small hand gripping my wrist with a desperate strength that mirrored the panic in his eyes. I was frozen there in the sterile silence of the airport parking lot when he told me what his mother, my own daughter, had been secretly planning. This is the story of how a child's raw fear saved us both from an unimaginable betrayal. Before we dive into the depths of this heartbreaking story, please take a moment to gently tap that subscribe button and join our family. Your support helps me keep sharing these powerful life lessons. Thank you, my dears. I live in Phoenix, Arizona with my daughter Serena and my 8th grandson Leo. Since Michael's passing 3 years ago in a construction accident, we had built a quiet life together, a life centered around Leo. He is a thoughtful boy, observant beyond his years, quiet, but never silent. He communicates with his eyes, a trait he inherited from his late father. Serena manages a large regional bank branch and travels often, sometimes several times a month. This was one of those times. That Tuesday evening felt routine. We were driving Serena to Sky Harbor International Airport for what she called a critical 3-day management seminar in Denver. The air inside the car was cool, the Arizona heat already fading as the sun set. Leo was in the back seat, his favorite worn-out space backpack clutched tight in his lap. He usually waved goodbye to his mother with a small smile and a quick hug, but tonight, he was completely silent. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, his brow furrowed in a way that tightened my chest. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" I murmured. He just shook his head slightly, his eyes never leaving his mother's profile. We arrived at the terminal, and the usual bustle seemed muted. Crowds thin at this hour. The air was dry and smelled faintly of jet fuel and sterile cleaners. "It will only be 3 days, Mom," Serena said, adjusting the strap of her carry-on bag, her voice brisk and slightly impatient. "Take care of Leo, and make sure he takes his allergy medicine." She leaned down to kiss her son on the forehead. "Be a good boy for Nana, okay?" Leo remained perfectly still, like a small marble statue. He only nodded once, a barely perceptible movement. Serena straightened, smoothed her tailored suit, and checked her watch. "Boarding starts soon. I have to go." We shared a quick embrace, a hug that felt more like a formality lately. Serena's professional life had seemed to consume her, pushing her further and further away emotionally. I often attribute it to the stress of being a single mother and the grief over Michael, but sometimes I felt a deeper coldness, a distance I couldn't bridge. Serena turned and walked swiftly toward the security checkpoint, her silhouette quickly swallowed by the stream of late-night travelers. Leo and I stood there watching until she was gone. "Let's go home, my love," I said, taking his small hand in mine. "It's getting late." We began the walk through the vast sterile terminal toward the parking garage. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a pale yellowish glow. Leo was still silent, his hands small and limp in mine. His silence usually didn't bother me. I understood his need for quiet contemplation, but tonight it felt heavy, ominous. He wasn't just quiet, he was tense. He entered the parking garage, cavern of concrete and shadows. It was almost empty, only the muffled sound of a distant engine disturbing the stillness. I pressed the key. The HLNV lights of our old sedan blinked 3 times, a familiar flash in the gloom. I started walking toward the car, gently tugging Leo along. That's when it happened. It was a sudden pull, strong and desperate, and almost violent resistance that stopped me dead in my tracks. Leo had wrenched his hand free, only to grab my wrist with all his strength. His small fingers dug painfully into my skin. I spun around confused, bending down to his level. "What is it, sweetie? Are you scared?" I asked, my voice soft. Leo's face, under the harsh yellow light of the parking pole, was ghostly pale. His large brown eyes, usually so full of gentle curiosity, were wide, with a terror so raw, so pure, that it struck me to the core. I had never seen that look on his face, not even the day we buried his father. Profound, deep chill, not from the air conditioning, but from something far colder, ran down my spine. "Nana," he whispered, his voice thin and shaky. I had to lean in close to hear the terrifying words. "Don't let us go back to the house tonight, please, Nana. Don't go back there." I stood there dumbfounded, my mind racing for a logical explanation. Maybe he missed his mother already, or maybe he was afraid of the empty house. "Don't worry, my heart," I tried to soothe him. "We'll be fine, just you and me. And we'll watch your favorite space movie tonight, okay?" He shook his head violently, clutching my wrist even harder, his whole body trembling. "No, Nana, don't go back to the house," he repeated, his voice cracking now with overwhelming panic. I heard, "Mama, planning something against us this morning. She was talking about a fire. Please believe me this time." In that instant, the mundane world shattered. Something inside me snapped. The sheer terror in my grandson's eyes was too real, too visceral to dismiss as a child's imagination. He knew something. Somehow, this 8-year-old child had stumbled upon a horrific secret. I remembered other small incidents Leo had mentioned, Serena arguing on the phone in hushed tones behind a locked office door, or finding her fiddling with the electrical panel in the utility room, saying it was just a minor repair. I had always dismissed them as fragments of worry from an overly sensitive child. Now they all coalesced into a sinister pattern. "Okay, baby," I whispered, stroking his pale cheek with my free hand. "I believe you. We are not going home tonight." The immediate relief that washed over his face was so powerful, so absolute, that it instantly extinguished the last flicker of my doubt. He was telling the truth. I stood up on shaky legs, my mind racing at a terrifying speed. If what Leo said was true, we couldn't use a credit card for a hotel. We couldn't call any friends who knew Serena. She would track us down immediately. She would know we were on to her. We had to disappear. I got into the car with Leo, helped him buckle his seatbelt, and climbed behind the wheel. My hands were shaking so badly, I struggled to get the key into the ignition. "Where are we going, Nana?" Leo asked, his voice still a little shaky, but calmer. I looked at his small, worried face in the rearview mirror and forced a confidence I didn't feel. "We're going on a little adventure, my sweet boy. We're going somewhere safe. I just need a minute to think." I started the engine and slowly backed out of the parking spot, my heart pounding a frantic drumbeat in my chest. We needed time. We needed proof. And above all, we needed to understand why my own daughter wanted us dead. I drove for almost an hour with no fixed destination, just trying to put as much distance as possible between us and our house. Leo finally fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted by the emotional strain. I kept glancing at him in the mirror, his face serene in sleep, a sharp contrast to the terror he had shown moments ago. How could a child so small be carrying such a monstrous secret? As I drove through the deserted city streets, my mind worked frantically, connecting every fragmented memory of the past few months. Serena had been different, cold, distant, obsessively locked in her home office, making late-night phone calls in a whisper. I had excused it all as grief, stress, single motherhood. But now, remembering every strange look, every time she stopped talking when I entered the room, a horrifying image of a monster in human form began to take shape. I stopped the car at a 24-hour truck stop far out on the city's edge. I desperately needed a plan and a cup of coffee. I bought a cup from the convenience store and returned to the car, watching Leo sleep. That's when my cell phone vibrated in my coat pocket. Serena's name flashed on the screen. My heart leaped into my throat. Her flight should have taken off hours ago. Why was she calling? With trembling hands, I answered the call. "Hello," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice even. "Hey, Mom." Serena's voice sounded unnervingly calm. "Where are you? You should have been home an hour ago." A shiver ran down my back. How did she know we weren't home? I thought frantically. We decided to stop for dinner." I lied, the words sticking in my throat. Leo was hungry. A heavy pause on the other end. "I see. And where are you eating?" "At that Mexican place near the old mall," I replied vaguely, trying to sound bored. "Shouldn't you be on the plane?" "There was a problem with the flight," she said quickly. Too quickly. "It was rescheduled for early tomorrow morning. I'm heading back home now." I froze. That made no sense. Serena was meticulous about her schedules. She would never let a delay like that catch her by surprise. "Oh, what a shame," I said, trying to sound sympathetic. "Well, we'll see you at home later then." "Yes, of course," she said, her voice suddenly sweet, almost falsely so. "Don't worry about rushing. Enjoy your dinner. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." I hung up the phone and stared at the screen. It was a test. A trap. She was checking to see if we were home. Maybe she had realized Leo had overheard her. Maybe she had cameras in the house, or a tracking app on my phone. Leo stirred in the back seat, slowly opening his eyes. "Was that Mama?" he asked, with a shrewdness that scared me. I nodded, unable to hide the truth from those perceptive brown eyes. "She said the flight was cancelled. She's coming back home." Leo's eyes widened again, this time with renewed terror. "She knows Nana. She knows we found out." I took a deep breath, trying to control the tremor in my hands. "Leo, I need you to tell me exactly what you heard this morning, everything. Every single detail." He sat up straight, smoothing his wrinkled t-shirt. He looked so much older than his 8 years as he began to speak. "Mama woke up really early. I heard her in the hallway, and I thought she was making coffee. But she went to the office and closed the door." He hesitated, looking down at his hands. "I know I shouldn't have, but I went to the door and listened." "It's okay, sweetie. Keep going," I urged him gently. She was talking really low, but I managed to hear. She said yes. "They'll be alone. 3 days is enough time for it to look like an accident. The faulty wiring during the night while they sleep. Nobody will suspect." Leo paused, taking a deep, shuddering breath. He then said something about papers and money. "She said once they're out of the way, I can finally access everything." My blood turned to ice in my veins. Access everything. Suddenly, a chilling clarity descended. 6 months ago, Michael, my late son-in-law, had left the documents for a substantial life insurance policy. Serena knew that I was the primary beneficiary, with specific clauses that allotted a considerable portion to Leo, which he could only access when he turned. Serena was the fund administrator, but she couldn't touch the main trust, not while I was alive. There was also the house Michael and I had owned, which after his death passed entirely to me. Serena lived with us rent-free, but the property was legally mine. Property constantly appreciating in value. "Leo," I asked, my voice barely a whisper, "did you hear your mother talking about money, or Grandpa Michael's insurance?" Before he nodded. "Slowly. When she said on the phone that she was stuck because of us." Every word was a crushing blow to my heart. My own daughter plotting to kill us for money. It was so absurd, so monstrous, that my mind rebelled against accepting it. But the evidence was overwhelming. The change in her behavior, the sudden interest in my will, the fake canceled flight. She wanted to catch us off guard. She wanted to ensure we would be home sleeping when the accident happened. "What are we going to do, Nana?" Leo asked, his small voice pulling me back to the horrifying reality. I looked at this extraordinary child who had sensed the danger before I did, who had saved our lives with his sharp observation and courage. "First, we're going to get even farther away," I replied, starting the car engine again. "And then we're going to get evidence." "Evidence?" Leo asked, confused. "Yes, sweetie, proof that shows your mother is planning something terrible, something we can take to the police." Leo nodded gravely. This was not a conversation a grandmother should ever have with her grandson, but we were in this together. It was just the two of us against someone I had always believed was my flesh and blood. As I drove through the night, an idea began to form in my mind, a risky plan, but one that might give us the proof we needed. "Leo," I said, looking at him in the rearview mirror, "do you remember George Hayes, the old doorman at our first apartment building?" He nodded. George was an old friend, a discreet and reliable man who had worked for decades in the building where Michael and I had lived before we moved into the house. "I think we need to pay him a visit," I said, steering the car toward the old neighborhood. It was a massive gamble, but at that moment we didn't have many options. We needed a safe place to spend the night. And more importantly, we needed help to expose Serena before she could try again. The car clock read 1:15 a.m. when we finally reached the familiar downtown area. My stomach clenched as I saw the old 6-story brick building where Michael and I had started our life together. I parked on a dark side street away from the main entrance and the security cameras. If Serena was truly tracking us, we couldn't leave a trail. "Stay here for just a minute, Leo," I said, turning off the engine. "Nina is going to check if Mr. Hayes is on the night shift." I got out of the car and walked quickly to the security booth, hugging the shadows. The booth was lit, and to my immense relief, there was George Hayes, his kind, wrinkled face bent over a large paperback book. I tapped lightly on the glass, and he looked up, confused at first. Then his eyes widened in surprise when he recognized me. "Clara," he stood up, opening the booth door. "What in the world are you doing here at this hour?" "George, forgive me for showing up like this," I spoke in a low, frantic whisper, looking nervously around. "But I have a desperate problem. I need your help now." The small staff apartment behind the main lobby was simple but blessedly warm and cozy. George had lived there since his wife passed away 10 years ago. It was a discreet space, with its own entrance, invisible to anyone who didn't know the building well. Perfect for what we needed. A temporary shelter. Leo was sitting at the small kitchen table, sipping hot apple juice. George had quickly warmed for him. The old doorman watched us with deep concern, still processing the incredible chilling story I had just told him. "Clara," he finally spoke, his deep voice grave and low. "Are you absolutely certain about this? It's a very serious accusation against your own daughter." I sighed heavily. "I know, George. It sounds like madness. I don't want to believe it myself." I looked at Leo, who kept his eyes fixed on the mug. "But I can't ignore what Leo heard, and there are too many strange pieces that I'm only now connecting." George nodded, slowly rubbing his chin. He had known our family for decades. He had seen Serena grow up. He had even been a pallbearer at Michael's funeral. "What do you plan to do, Clara?" he asked. "We need proof," I replied, my mind now completely focused on the risky plan that had formed on the highway. "If we go to the police now, with just the testimony of an agent and my suspicions, they won't take us seriously. Serena is respected in the community. She has a solid career. They'll say it's a misunderstanding, or worse, that I'm becoming delusional." George frowned, but didn't disagree. He knew I was right. "And where do I fit into this alarming situation?" he asked. "I need to go back to the house," I said, feeling Leo tense up beside me. "Not to stay, but to look for evidence. I need to know exactly what Serena was planning, and I need Leo to stay here safely while I do that." "No, Nana," Leo exclaimed, putting the mug down on the table with a dull clink. "It's dangerous. Mama might come back." I took his cold little hands in mine. "I know, sweetie, but I'm going to be careful. I'm just going to take a quick look in her office to see if I can find any clues. I'll be in and out before she even realizes." Leo shook his head, tears glistening in his eyes. "I don't want you to go. I don't want to stay alone." "You won't be alone," I reassured him. "Mr. Hayes will stay right here with you, and I promise I'll be back soon." "You shouldn't go alone," George intervened, worry evident on his face. "If what you say is true, it's far too risky." "I don't have a choice," I replied. "If Serena finds out we know something, she could destroy any evidence, or worse, she might try something more direct." I shuddered at the possibilities. "I need to act now, while she still believes we suspect nothing." George sighed, running his hand through his gray hair. "At least let me drive you there. I'll wait in the car on the corner. If you don't come out in 20 minutes, I'm calling the police." I nodded. It was better than going completely alone. "I want to go to Leo," insisted. "No, sweetie," I said firmly. "It's too dangerous. I need you to stay here safe. I promise I'll be back." After more insistence and tearful pleas, Leo finally gave in, but not before hugging me with enough force to take my breath away. "Promise you'll be careful, Nana," he whispered in my ear. "I promise you," I replied, kissing his forehead. George lent us an old disposable phone, the kind without registration, so we could communicate without using my phone, which Serena might have tracked. We agreed on the codes. 1 ring and hang up meant I was fine. 2 rings meant trouble. After making sure Leo was comfortable on the small sofa bed in the apartment, with strict instructions to lock the door and not open it for anyone but us, George and I left, heavy-hearted about what I was about to do. The dashboard clock read 1:55 a.m. when we stopped a block away from my house. The streets were completely deserted, just a few streetlights casting long, lonely shadows on the asphalt. "I have a bad feeling about this, Miss Clara," George murmured, turning off the engine. "Are you sure you want to go?" I swallowed, observing the dark silhouette of my house at the end of the street. The windows were all dark. There was no sign of Serena's SUV in the driveway. "I don't have a choice," I repeated, more to convince myself than him. 20 minutes, just like we agreed. "If I don't come back or call you, call the police." George nodded gravely. "God protect you," he whispered. I got out of the car and walked quickly down the sidewalk, keeping to the deepest shadows. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure anyone yards away could hear it. The house was silent. when I used my spare key to enter through the back door near the utility room. I closed it softly behind me and stood absolutely still in the dark kitchen, listening intently. There was nothing but the low, continuous hum of the refrigerator and the distant, steady tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the living room. I took out the small pen I had brought and illuminated the path to the hallway. I needed to reach Serena's home office on the second floor without making a sound. Every floorboard that creaked under my weight seemed like thunder in the absolute silence of the house. Reaching the foot of the stairs, I froze. A strange smell floated faintly in the air, sweet and metallic and chemical at the same time. I sniffed again, trying desperately to identify it. It wasn't the smell of gas that Leo had mentioned. It was something different. Something that shouldn't be there. Climbing the stairs seemed like an eternity each step, carefully calculated to avoid the ones that I knew usually creaked. In the second floor hallway, I stopped in front of Serena's office door. It was locked, as I had fully expected. I took out the tiny bobby pin I had prepared from my pocket years ago when Serena was a difficult teenager and locked her room door. During her fits of anger, I had learned how to pick simple levitt locks like this one. I never thought I would use that foolish little skill in a situation so grim, after a few tense, silent minutes, I heard the satisfying small click of the lock yielding. I pushed the door open slowly, praying the hinges wouldn't squeak or betray me. Serena's office was immaculately organized as always. Shelves stacked with books on finance and management. A dark oak desk with a closed laptop, a plush leather swivel chair. Nothing at all seemed out of place. I closed the door behind me and started my frantic search. The laptop was password protected, so I focused entirely on the physical documents. I carefully opened desk. Drawers examined, folders, and searched every single corner for anything suspicious. It was in the third desk drawer that my fingers brushed against something distinct. A thick maroon folder, different from the others, hidden under a dense pile of company documents. Inside were bank statements I had never seen before, accounts in names I didn't recognize, large and repeated money transfers to a person named J. Miller, and most alarmingly, a copy of my own life insurance policy, with several handwritten notes scrawled in the margin about payout, values, and specific clauses. My heart pounded at deafening rhythm. It was real. Everything Leo had overheard was terrifyingly real. My own daughter was plotting. The noise downstairs suddenly interrupted my thoughts. The unmistakable and heavy sound of the front door opening. I froze blood, turning instantly to ice in my veins. Serena was back. I quickly grabbed the disposable phone and dialed George's number. 2 short rings. Then, I immediately hung up. The signal for trouble. Immediately, I photographed the most incriminating pages of the insurance documents and the large money transfers with the phone's camera. There was no time to analyze everything, but I needed the proof. I put the folder back, exactly as I had found it, and instantly hid behind the office door. Turning off the pen, I heard heavy footsteps on the stairs. Now slow and deliberate steps. It didn't sound like Serena's usual firm, hurried walk. It was slower, more cautious. Adrenaline surged violently through my body. I was cornered. If I left the office, I would be seen. If I stayed, I would be found. When Serena came into work in the morning, or worse, if she decided to enter the office now. The steps stopped in the hallway. I could hear deep, uneven breathing on the other side of the door. A shadow moved slowly under the door, cracked briefly, blocking the faint hallway light. Someone was out there, standing still, as if listening intently. I held my breath, feeling cold sweat instantly run down my back. The door handle slowly began to turn. The office door opened a few inches with an almost imperceptible groan. I stayed absolutely motionless, pressed tight against the wall behind the door, barely breathing. The darkness was my only ally. Now a tall shadow was cast long onto the office floor. It wasn't Serena. The height was different, taller and much wider. A man. The shadow stood perfectly still for a few tense moments, as if whoever it was listening intently to the silence. Then, Serena's voice came from downstairs, muffled by the distance. "Jackson, is everything clear up there?" My heart stopped. Jackson, the name that appeared on the bank statements. J. Miller. "Just checking," a deep male voice replied, only a few feet away from me. "The house is empty. No sign of them. I told you something was wrong." "Impossible." Serena's voice sounded irritated, now closer. "They should be here. The plan was for tomorrow night, after I got back from the trip. Now the timeline is all messed up." Serena's footsteps were coming up the stairs quickly. I was trapped between two people who were apparently plotting my death. My only immediate way out was the office window, which opened onto a narrow stone ledge over the backyard. A dangerous fall for anyone. Lethal for a 72-year-old woman with weak joints. I said, involving the kid was risky. The male voice continued, now moving away from the door toward the hallway. Kids are unpredictable. He might have heard something. Impossible, Serena replied. Now fully in the hallway, Leo never wakes up before 7, and I always talk in the office with the door closed. Besides, even if he did hear, who would ever believe in a dull loud thump came from downstairs, followed instantly by a muffled curse. What was that? Serena asked, alarmed. I don't know. Jackson replied, I'll check. You keep getting her room ready. The man's footsteps quickly retreated down the stairs. Serena stayed in the hallway for a few more seconds. Then I heard her steps, heading to my room at the end of the hall. My mind raced. My room, getting my room ready. What were they doing? And what was that noise downstairs? George must have come into the house after receiving my trouble signal. My brave old friend trying to help me was now also in desperate danger. I slipped out from behind the door, moving with agonizing slowness to avoid making a sound. Through the crack in the door, I could see the hallway was momentarily empty. Now on tiptoes, I approached the office window. I needed to get out of there and call the police. Not only was my life in danger, but so was George's, and most importantly, Leo's. I opened the window with extreme, painstaking care, avoiding any sound whatsoever. The stone ledge was narrower than I imagined, only about a foot wide. Below, the 20-foot drop ended in the backyard grass. In any other time, I wouldn't even consider this terrifying option. But desperation is a fierce and powerful motivator. I put one foot outside, feeling the cold morning air hit my face. I had to gather all my courage, all my resolve to swing my other leg through the window and balance precariously on the ledge. My 72-year-old joints protested loudly. Arthritis is no joke, but fear gave me an agility I didn't know I still possessed. Suddenly, I heard agitated voices downstairs. A heavy dull thud, followed by a choked groan. My heart clenched as I instantly recognized George's voice. They had caught him. Who else is with you, old man? Jackson's rough voice echoed through the house. How did you know to come in here? I couldn't hear George's response, but the sound of something heavy falling made me shudder violently. I closed my eyes for a second, silently begging my old friend's forgiveness. I couldn't help him now. Our best chance was for me to escape and find help for all of us. I started moving sideways along the ledge, inch by terrifying inch, my back pressed against the cold brick wall, my fingers clutching the rough texture of the wall. Sweat instantly ran down my face. Despite the cold night, there was a wooden lattice covered in ivy on the corner of the house. If I could reach it, maybe I could use it to climb down to the garden. It was risky, but less so than jumping straight down. Serena, I found someone. Jackson's voice shouted from inside the house. An old guy trying to sneak in the back way. Who is he? My daughter's voice sounded distant, coming from my room. He won't talk, but he seems to know your mother. She must be nearby. I froze on the ledge. They knew I was in the house. The search would intensify rapidly. I no longer had time for caution. I needed to act. With a surge of pure adrenaline, I reached the lattice and began to climb down, ignoring the throbbing pain in my joints and the scratches from the wooden stakes. I half slipped, half climbed the last few feet, landing awkwardly on the grass with a dull thud that sent a searing jolt of pain through my left hip. There was no time to mourn my injury. I staggered to my feet and ran as quietly as I could across the backyard toward the low wall that divided our property from the neighboring miller's house. As I scurried through the shadow of the trees, I heard the office window being opened violently. A powerful flashlight beam instantly swept the yard, almost catching me. I ducked low behind a thick rose bush, holding my breath until my lungs ached. Is anyone down there? Jackson's voice boomed through the night. I'm going to check. Keep the old man tied up. I scrambled over the low wall with difficulty, falling onto the other side into the miller's yard. Our elderly neighbors were heavy sleepers and fortunately were away traveling. I ran across their lawn, skirting the house, feeling a sharp twinge in my hip with every step. When I reached a parallel street, I was already gasping for breath, my lungs burning, but fear kept me going. I got as far away from the house as humanly possible, running through the shadows until I reached a busy main avenue where a few bars were still open open with people scattered on the sidewalk. I grabbed the disposable phone and dialed 911 with frantically trembling hands. As I waited for someone to answer, I checked the photos I had taken of the documents in the office. The proof we desperately needed was right there. "Police, what is your emergency?" The operator's calm voice sounded on the phone. "My name is Clara Ellington," I said, trying to control the tremble in my voice. "I need to report an attempted murder. My daughter is plotting to kill me and my grandson for insurance money. She has an accomplice, and they just captured a friend of mine who tried to help me." There was a noticeable pause on the other end. I could imagine what the operator was thinking. Just another paranoid old woman imagining wild conspiracies. "Ma'am, where are you right now?" he asked, his tone professional but cautious. "On the I-10 service road near the 400 block. I'm running for my house. Please, I need you to send patrols to 1 Oakdale Lane. My friend George Hayes is in mortal danger. Do you have any proof of these accusations?" "I have photograph documents and a witness, my 8-year-old grandson, who heard my daughter planning everything." I hesitated, then added, "I know it sounds crazy, but it's the absolute truth. Please, there's no time to lose." As I spoke, a patrol car passed slowly down the avenue. I waved frantically, still holding the phone to my ear. To my immense relief, the patrol car stopped abruptly. 2 young police officers got out, approaching with cautious expressions. "The police are here," I told the operator. "I'm going to explain the situation to them." The next few minutes were a blur. I quickly explained the situation to the officers, showing them the clear photos of the documents on the phone. I mentioned Leo, safe in Georgia's apartment, and Georgia's own situation, possibly injured and held hostage in my house. Something in my sheer desperation or the clarity of the evidence I presented must have convinced the police. One of them spoke quickly into the radio, requesting immediate backup, while the other helped me gently into the patrol car. "We'll rescue your friend first," said the older officer, a kind man whose face was marked by years of service. "Then we'll find your grandson. Can you give us the exact address of where he is?" One provided the address of the old building and precise instructions on how to reach the discreet staff apartment. My greatest worry now was that Serena and her accomplice, realizing I had escaped, might figure out where Leo was. Would she remember George and our old long-standing friendship? The patrol car sped through the nearly deserted streets at that early hour of the morning. 2 other patrol cars followed us, sirens silent, only their blue lights flashing eerily in the night. My heart pounded as we approached my house. "There's an entry through the back," I explained to the officer. "The kitchen door. George must be downstairs." We stopped at a safe distance. The police asked me to wait inside the patrol car while they surrounded the house. I watched distressed as they positioned themselves, communicating via radios. It seemed like an eternity, though it was probably only a few minutes. Then everything happened very quickly. I heard police officers shouting "freeze," followed by the sound of breaking glass. The door slammed violently, more shouts, a crash, and then silence. Minutes later, I saw George being helped out of the house by 2 officers. My old friend was limping badly with a visible cut on his forehead, but he was alive. I felt such immense relief that tears instantly streamed down my face. Immediately after, Jackson came out in handcuffs, escorted by 2 officers. He was a hefty man, with heavy tattoos and a furious expression on his face. I waited, heart pounding, for Serena, but she didn't appear. The older officer approached the patrol car where I was waiting. "The house is clear, ma'am, but your daughter isn't here." It seems she fled out the back when she realized we'd arrived. A fresh chill ran down my spine. "Leo," I whispered, "we need to get to my grandson before she does." The patrol car sliced through the night at full speed, siren blaring this time. I sat in the back seat, my hands twisting with unbearable anxiety. Beside me, George, with a makeshift bandage on his forehead, seemed equally worried. She didn't know where we were, he kept saying, trying to calm me down. I didn't mention the apartment when they caught me, but I couldn't be calmed. The dark premonition was growing heavy in my chest. Serena was always smart, ruthlessly so. She knew my old friends, my old habits. If she remembered George, she might deduce exactly where to look. When we arrived at the old building, my heart almost stopped dead. The service door leading to the staff apartment was slightly ajar. "Stay here," The officer ordered immediately, drawing his weapon, but I couldn't obey that command. I jumped out of the patrol car and ran after him, ignoring his protests. George followed me, limping heavily. The hallway was dark and silent. The apartment door was closed, apparently untouched. The officer knocked 3 times. "Leo," I called, my voice trembling violently. "Leo, sweetie, it's Nana. Are you there?" Silence. A silence that pierced my ears like sharp needles. The officer tried the handle locked. He stepped back a little. Then he lunged with his shoulder, knocking the door down with a deafening crash. The apartment was dark. The officer entered first, turning on his flashlight, followed closely by George and me. He swept the small space with the beam of light. The kitchen was empty. The living room with the sofa bed was messy. "Leo," I called again, panic rising rapidly in my throat. That's when I noticed something unsettling on the sofa bed. A small torn piece of paper caught under an empty juice cup. I took it with trembling hands and read the message written in hurried, messy handwriting. "Mama found me. She said she needs to protect me from you, that you're crazy and making up stories. I'm scared, Nana. Help." My knees gave out completely. George instantly held me up before I fell to the floor. "She took him," I murmured, stunned, the realization crashing down on me. "Serena took Leo." The officer immediately radioed in, reporting the kidnapping of a minor child. Within minutes, a massive operation was being mounted. Descriptions of Serena, her likely car, and Leo. Roadblocks on all the city's exits, alerts on highways and at the airport. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. Serena was meticulous. She had been planning this for months. She certainly had escape routes prepared, perhaps fake identification, and she knew Leo better than anyone. She knew exactly what lies to spin to manipulate him, even if only temporarily. I was taken to the precinct along with George, where we gave detailed statements. I showed the police the clear photos of the documents, recounted everything Leo had heard, and explained everything about the life, insurance, and Serena's growing toxic greed. The sergeant, a man with deep, tired lines under his eyes, listened to everything attentively. Contrary to what I feared, he didn't treat me like a confused old woman. The evidence was far too strong, especially after the accomplice. Jackson's statement began to solidify my story. "He's cooperating to reduce his own sentence," the sergeant explained. "He confirmed that your daughter hired him to simulate a major electrical fire that would kill you and your grandson in your sleep. He was to be paid with a portion of the insurance money." I felt utterly nauseous hearing the confirmation of that macabre plan. "And what about Leo?" I asked, my voice cracking with desperation. "Do you have any leads yet?" The sergeant hesitated. "Not yet, but we're monitoring all routes out of the city. Your daughter won't get far." But I wasn't so sure. The hours passed, and every minute, without news, increased my anguish to an unbearable level. Sitting in the precinct waiting room with an untouched cup of weak tea, I felt myself aging even more rapidly. George was beside me, silent, occasionally squeezing my hand in solidarity. His face showed worry, but also a quiet determination. "We'll find him, Miss Clara," he said after a long silence. "Leo is a smart kid. He'll find a way to leave us clues." I nodded, trying to cling to that fragile hope. Leo truly was extraordinary. His perception and intelligence had already saved us once. Perhaps they could save him now. That's when I remembered something I had overlooked. Something Leo had mentioned just days ago. Something about Serena and a special remote place. "Wait," I said, sitting up straight in the hard chair. "I think I know where she might have taken Leo." George and the officer who was passing by the room looked at me expectantly. 2 weeks ago, Leo mentioned that Serena took him to see a surprise house, a place in the country a few hours from the city. He was excited because there were animals and a large pond. At the time, I thought it was just a day trip. The sergeant was called immediately. I explained my suspicion. Serena might be preparing his place as a safe house, a hideout, where she would flee after the accident that was supposed to kill us. "Do you know where this property is located?" the sergeant asked, his pen poised. "Not exactly. Leo mentioned it was near a small town. I think the name was something like Maple Creek or Willow Ridge, something like that. It wasn't much, but it was a desperate clue." Investigators immediately began checking property records recently acquired or rented in towns with those types of names within a radius of a few hours from Phoenix. Meanwhile, I received alarming news. Serena's car had been found abandoned at a gas station on the highway highway, heading east. She had probably switched vehicles. The search was getting complicated quickly. The clock on the precinct wall read 5:30 in the morning. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten slightly. I hadn't slept for almost 24 hours. But adrenaline and fear kept me razor-sharp alert. That's when my phone, which had been returned after forensics examined the photos, vibrated in my pocket. An unknown number. I answered, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. "Hello, Nana." Leo's small, scared voice made my heart jump into my throat. "Leo, sweetie, where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm okay," he whispered urgently. "Mama's sleeping right now. I found her phone and hid it to call you." "You are so brave, my love," I said, trying to keep my voice perfectly calm as I frantically signaled to the sergeant, who instantly called a technician to trace the call. "Can you tell me where you are?" "It's a house in the country. It has a pond and lots of trees. We came by car, but it was a long drive and I slept a little. When I woke up, we were already here. Do you see any sign, any name nearby? I can't look out the window right now. Mama might wake up." His voice trembled. "She's different, Nana. She says weird things. She says, you want to hurt us? Don't believe her, sweetie. I'm doing everything to find you." There was a silence, then a soft sound of movement. When Leo spoke again, his voice was even quieter. "There's a mailbox at the entrance. It says, Riverbend Acres, Route 60. There's a mailbox at the entrance. It says, Riverbend Acres, Route 60. My mind instantly registered the information. I repeated the name and the route aloud to the sergeant who was on the phone, tracing the call. The technician confirmed that the call originated from a property near a place called Riverbend Acres, about 3 hours away in a sparsely populated area east of Phoenix. This matched the information about the remote house Leo had mentioned. "Leo, listen to me." I spoke into the phone, my voice firm but gentle. "You need to hang up now. If your mother wakes up, she see her phone is missing. You need to hide it. And then you need to go hide yourself. Do you understand?" "Yes, Nana," he whispered. "I'm going to hide in the small wooden shed behind the house. I saw it earlier. It has some blankets." "That's perfect, my love. You are so brave. We're coming for you now. Just stay hidden and silent. Don't open the door for anyone. Okay, hurry, Nana. I miss you. I miss you to my heart. Be silent as a mouse." I hung up and handed the disposable phone to the sergeant. "He's at Riverbend Acres, Route 60. I told him, my eyes burning with unshed tears. "He's going to hide in a shed behind the house." The sergeant acted immediately. Within minutes, a tactical team was being mobilized. I insisted on going with them, but the sergeant firmly refused. "Ma'am, we understand your concern, but this is a higher risk situation. We need to be able to move fast and discreetly. You need to stay here. We have everything we need." I knew he was right. I was exhausted, injured, and would only be a burden to the officers. My heart ached. But I trusted these men. I gave them a detailed description of Serena's appearance, her usual state of mind, when stressed, in Leo's description. Then I waited. The hours that followed were the longest and most agonizing of my entire life. George and I sat in that sterile room, drinking cold coffee and praying silently. Every time the door opened, my heart leaped, hoping for news. The media had already picked up the story, and the news channels were showing pictures of Serena and Leo. The story of the respectable bank manager accused of plotting her family's death for an inheritance was sensational and terrifying. At 8:45 a.m., a uniformed officer finally entered the room. His face was grave, but there was a noticeable flicker of relief in his eyes. "We found him, Mrs. Ellington. Leo is safe." I choked back a sob of pure, overwhelming relief. George let out a heavy sigh next to me. "Serena," I managed to ask, my voice trembling. "She was apprehended without incident. She tried to flee when the team entered the property, but was quickly caught. She's in custody now." The officer smiled faintly. As for Leo, he was exactly where he said he'd be, in a little shed. He was frightened, but otherwise completely fine. I finally allowed myself to cry. Tears of pure joy and absolute relief streamed down my face. My brave little man was safe. The nightmare was finally over. The police arranged for an immediate reunion. When Leo walked into the precinct, he saw me and instantly broke into a run. He launched himself into my arms, hugging me with all his small might. His familiar scent, his solid warmth in my arms, was the most precious and grounding feeling I had ever experienced. "Nana, I knew you would come for me," he whispered, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "Of course I would, my sweet love," I replied, kissing the top of his head. "I told you, we were in this together." We spent a long time simply holding each other. Leo was tired, but surprisingly coherent. He recounted how his mother had woken him up in George's apartment and lied to him, saying I was having a mental breakdown and she needed to take him somewhere safe. But when she confiscated his things and forced him to keep quiet during the long car ride, he realized something was very wrong. The legal process was long and incredibly painful. Serena was charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and kidnapping. She never showed any remorse. In fact, during the brief moments I saw her, she only glared at me with an icy fury, a raw expression of betrayal, as if I was the one who had wronged her. The investigation uncovered the full scope of her greed. She had amassed significant debt through risky investments and saw the insurance money and the sale of my house as her only way out. She had been secretly transferring money to Jackson for months to set up the scheme. It was a cold, calculated plan, rooted in pure. The woman I raised my flesh and blood had disappeared, replaced by a monster. I had to testify in court, a harrowing experience. But telling the truth for Leo's sake gave me the strength to overcome the pain. Jackson testified against Serena, securing a harsher sentence for her. In the end, Serena received a long sentence, a just punishment for her unspeakable crimes. The verdict brought closure, but no real peace. The pain of losing my daughter in that horrific way will forever remain. Leo and I moved out of that house and settled into a new, smaller place in a completely different neighborhood. The old house, the place of the betrayal, had too many ghosts. We started building a new life together, a life based on trust and absolute unconditional love. George Hayes, my brave and loyal friend, visits us often and has truly become the grandfather Leo lost. Leo is thriving. He is a happy, healthy boy who laughs easily and has started talking a lot more often about space and science. He never asks about his mother, and I never mention her. Our life is a tapestry of simple joys: reading together, baking cookies, or just watching the sunset from our new frontporch.com. Every time I look at Leo, I remember the icy grip of his small hand in the airport parking lot, the day he saved our lives. He taught me the most profound lesson of all, that true family isn't determined by blood but by courage, loyalty, and the unwavering willingness to protect those we love at any cost. Sometimes the hardest goodbyes lead to the most beautiful new beginnings. If this story touched your heart, if it made you hold your loved ones a little tighter, please share your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that little bell so you never miss a new story of hope and resilience. Until next time, remember to always cherish your family.